Hey y'all. I'm sorry. Hey y'all. We're all up on the internet. It is October the 26th, I believe, 2019. It's a Sunday afternoon. Either way, we're straight chilling. All right. And we don't got nothing better to do. I've been fiddling around with things in my apartment and stuff, just cleaning up and stuff. So regular, kind of easygoing Sunday. I came across a particular video, and I just noticed that it has 2 thumbs up and 2 thumbs down. And that's just the way I like it. I wanted to go ahead and check it out because I have been checking out a lot of videos here on YouTube, or I just been listening to them as I'm cleaning up and stuff and getting stuff done, situated. And I noticed that we got our man, if you want to call him that, Scotty Israel. And I noticed that somebody just came into the room right now. I appreciate you. Thank you, man. Holler at me in the comment section. Safety first, like I always say. But if you get a chance, holler at me in the comment section, and I'll respond to you. I don't know how long this is going to be as far as this broadcast, but I do want to hear the entirety of this here video, and it just came across my plate. You might not have gotten wind of it because it's on local news. It's WPLG, Local 10. That's out of South Florida. And they got a video, and you can see it right here. Scott Israel discuss. I can't say it without laughing. Scott Israel discusses not being reinstated as Broward Sheriff. And what else to say? Running it. Y'all, we already knew that this was going to happen because I heard tell, and I bet a lot of y'all heard out there as well, that, believe it or not, Ripley's believe it or not, we are past the twilight zone. Sheriff Scotty Israel has not only been denied a number of times to get his job back, not only that, but he's going to be running again in 2020. Like he has any sort of chance at all. Like as if he's not the Hillary Clinton of sheriffs here in America. And, I just started to play the video by myself. I was watching it, and I swear, okay, there's going to be an intro, and we're going to go through it, but there's going to be an intro, and the reporter, he's going to be talking about it. He's pretty much introducing the topic of what they're about to talk about, all right, very briefly. And then he asks Scotty Israel a question. You're about to hear it, all right? We're about to go through it. And then Scotty Israel gives an answer. Now, within the first sentence of his answer to the gentleman reporter, I believe you're going to notice a certain word. There's going to be one word that stands out to you in the very first sentence that he says. All right? And it's because of that word that he said that I was like, dude, we can't miss this opportunity. We had to, if I'm going to watch this video, we're going to live stream it. We're going to share it. That one word, and you're going to hear it immediately. He's going to say one word, and that word convinced me we got to go live, y'all. So who's ever in the viewing area or whatever and stuff, and I appreciate you. Know that, safety first. Holler at me in the comments and stuff, but without any further ado, let's go ahead and watch it for the first time together. All right, live here on the internet. And let me know if it's buffering at all. This is Scott Israel discusses not being reinstated. Let's go for it.
Scott Israel went to Tallahassee last week as the suspended sheriff of Broward, and he returned by midweek, still without his badge. State senators agreed by a vote of 25-15 to permanently remove him from his job by using a state statute from 1868 in reverse. One lawmaker called it a dangerous legal precedent. Another said the shootings at the airport in Fort Lauderdale and in Parkland were not an individual failure, but an institutional one. And in the end, was removing Israel the right thing to do? Was he treated unfairly? The former Broward Sheriff, Scott Israel, is here to answer those questions and much more today on This Week in South Florida. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Calvin.
We've known each other for a long time.
Many years.
Yes, absolutely. So what are your thoughts about just the final vote of 25-15 by the state Senate?
The unfairness, the hoax, it was bogus.
All right. I'm going to play that one more time again. In the first sentence, He said what? Scotty Israel just said what to us right now? What word did he say right now? Let's hear it again.
1968
In
in
case you missed
reverse.
it.
One lawmaker called it a dangerous legal precedent. Another said the shootings at the airport in Fort Lauderdale and in Parkland were not an individual failure, but an institutional one. And in the end, was removing Israel the right thing to do? Was he treated unfairly? The former Broward sheriff, Scotty.
Mind you, before he answers, it's so hilarious that the reporter is like, is Sheriff Scotty Israel a damn shame? I know a lot of people have been saying he's an absolute disgrace and stuff like that. Without further ado, here's Scotty Israel. He's sitting right by me.
Is here to answer those questions and much more today on This Week in South Florida. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Calvin.
We've known each other for a long time.
Many years.
Yes, absolutely. So, what are your thoughts about just the final vote of 25 to 15 by the state Senate?
The unfairness, the hoax, it was bogus, the whole process.
All right, so we're about to continue. That's all I've seen as far as this whole video goes yet. We're about to dive into the rest of it. But Sheriff Scotty Israel, I mean, I couldn't even believe it. I had to play it back a second time to convince myself that I heard what I heard. Sheriff Scotty Israel just described his removal as sheriff from Broward County as a hoax. Out of all the words you could have used in your whole life, in the whole world, in the English language, he used the word hoax for it. All right. Straight up and down, unbelievable. But with that being said, let's go ahead and see what else he has to say.
And not only is it unfair, and as Dr. King said, an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. Not only is it an injustice to me and my family, but it's an injustice to the people of Broward County. The 2016 election was stolen from them, was taken from them. And a lot of people that send me texts and phone calls of encouragement are very angry. And
check this out. All the people that he's talking about, Scotty Israel, they don't have any names. You understand? He's telling you about people who do not exist. And if they do exist, of course, they're not going to be wanting to be on record for saying, oh, yeah, Scotty should get his job back.
We're going to get reelected in August.
So, and considering that you've already filed, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes. And so with that being said, you actually got more votes in the last election than Hillary Clinton in Broward County.
Wow, that's a good way to put it. That's a real good way to put it. He said you actually got more votes than Hillary Clinton. Is that hard to do? Is that hard to do in Broward County? And before we go on any further, like you just said, this whole thing's a hoax. And secondly, they stole the 2016 election. I don't know if her name was Brenda Snipes. I believe it was. If you want to talk about stealing elections, Sheriff Scotty Israel, because guess what? She's of the Democratic persuasion. If you're talking about stealing elections, that's what you're talking about. And we already put it out there. It's stone cold fact. I don't care who says it, who doesn't say it. I don't care what kind of fake news is out there. Sheriff Scotty Israel stole his election. And that much I can guarantee, and I'll put it on everything. Yeah, the Democratic force behind Sheriff Scotty Israel stole his election when he got put into sheriff. All right, that's a guarantee. So it's just another example of people like Sheriff Scotty Israel, for example, accusing people of what he knows he did. Anyways.
Well, I assume that you fully expect to be reelected. What is interesting is that the very process that got you unelected or taken from office here is the very process you may use, in fact, to tell voters, hey, look, this election was stolen from you. Your vote was stolen from you.
That's exactly what we will do. It's the truth.
He's accusing, like I just said, I mean, like what's very apparent in front of our faces. He's accusing people of stealing the election from him. Or stealing election from the Democratic Party, so to say, because he wasn't elected. He was removed by DeSantis. But he's talking about that election. I don't know. He's talking about this whole trend that we're seeing where no, we're putting in Donald Trump. No, we're putting in Ron DeSantis. No, we're tired of all your BS. We're tired of the fact is that you make us unsafe. He's talking about, oh yeah, no, that was stolen. It's the exact opposite. And this criminal right here, that's the thing what I got to stress. I don't know all the different charges could be put against him, but this criminal right here is just like typical, blaming you of every last thing that he did. Every last thing that did. If you want to know what Scotty Israel did and all the different various things that he's guilty of, wait to see what he accuses you of. All right, and write that down in a list because I promise you he done every last one of those things.
To think that I'm a Democrat, as you know.
Oh, we know.
I'd like to talk about 3 Republicans today.
Oh, yeah.
One is United States Senator Rick Scott, then Governor Rick Scott. He was the governor throughout this first year of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in the aftermath. He never suspended me because there was no reason to suspend me. The Republican sheriff who was chairman of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas investigation, he said on TV, there's no malfeasance, there's no misfeasance, there's no reason to suspend the sheriff.
Look, I don't know who he's talking about, if it's Grady Judd or that other guy. It don't matter. We told you. We've been talking about, this malfeasance and stuff like that. I don't care what some person in the government said. All right. We've been all up on YouTube getting banned and stuff like this just for calling you out. We've called out all sort of misfeasance. All right.
But the one that hurts the most is their referee, their umpire. They chose a Republican retired state representative, a man that they talked about, and they were right, that has honor and integrity. And he said, reinstate that sheriff. And they still didn't do it.
You're talking about the special master. What is interesting that in your initial statement about the suspension, you said that you did nothing wrong. And this time around with your statement with the permanent removal, you apologized. So what's the difference between what happened then and what happened, obviously, months later?
Well, there were mistakes, as Special Master Gillette said, Calvin. There were mistakes by individuals, but they weren't systemic. There wasn't an organizational failure like one.
We've already discussed the entire system and organization of a sheriff, Scotty Israel, and how I'm just surprised it didn't happen sooner, to be honest with you. It was extremely systematic, and it goes without saying for the most part, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. As a sheriff, whenever something bad happens, under your jurisdiction, is it your job? Is it normal for you to blame every single last person but yourself? And I'm talking about going out of your way to blame every single person you possibly can, but not yourself, not in any sort of way. And in fact, when you're doing it, you're describing your own self as amazing. You said that you have amazing leadership. I've never met a decent person in their life who's ever referred to their own leadership as amazing. I've never seen that.
The Senate said, one of the Senate said, I think if I had, we don't get mulligans in life, only on golf courses, but the week or days after Stoneman Douglas, I went on and I used that term, amazing leadership, on one of the other shows. And basically our agency was getting ridiculed, and people were saying they lost faith in the Broward Sheriff Deputy. And I went on, and what I wanted to say, and I apologize profusely, I did a really poor job of saying what I wanted to say, but I was just trying to say you can have faith and confidence in the Broward Sheriff's Deputy. They have done amazing things over the years, and I just wanted the community to have confidence in the Broward Sheriff's Office.
His words were, I have shown amazing leadership. He was saying, I did it. He wasn't saying, oh, we have an amazing staff, dude. We have all sort of amazing people. He said, I showed amazing leadership. right? And we all seen the
You
clip.
called the process bogus. Are you specifically talking about the statute that was used, the 1868 state law that was used sort of in reverse, the alter ego statute that was used to remove you from office?
Well, it was used incorrectly, and it was from the 1800s when you might have had 2 or 3 deputies. Now we have, I work with 6,000 people, but so many things, so many more things, Calvin. We're talking about the fact that facts didn't matter. The Senate was told.
Is that right? Is it right that facts didn't matter? Is Scotty Israel telling us something that we didn't know as far as facts, and that they don't matter at all? Right? The only thing that ever mattered in this situation was people's emotions. Right? That's all they had on the news was people crying and stuff. All right, but now he wants to talk about, oh, facts don't matter. Trust me, we know that facts do not matter. All right, you don't have to tell us that, Scotty. But let's see if he tells us anything new.
Don't worry about evidence. This is all about politics. And as
nobody's even discussed evidence. All right. As far as you'd be hard pressed to find anyone on the television who ever even brought up the idea of evidence, and that evidence actually exists. All right.
Kids say on their text, SMH, shaking my head. I never thought I could be in a Senate in the United States of America and hear the governor's attorney look at a senator, Senator Gary Farmer, when asked, why didn't you come and visit me? And he said, and I quote, we didn't think you were gettable. That's just.
What did he mean by that, gettable? What do you mean? He didn't think he was accessible, or what?
No, he meant that he didn't think he could get his vote.
Him. Okay, yeah. Yeah, interestingly, now, this process was in part obviously led by the Parkland families, who are understandably still grieving, and they want someone accountable and to be held accountable for this. What do you say to them who say this was justifiable, this was done fairly?
I don't really say anything to them. I do what my wife and I and my triplets have continually done. My triplets went to Stoneman Douglas.
I know they did. I remember.
My boys were football players there. My daughter graduated with a scholarship to go to the University of Florida. But I don't say anything to them. I pray for them. I would never push back. Not one time have I or will I push back on parents who lost their children. As far as I'm concerned, they can say, whatever they want. But at the end of the day, I think that in the Broward County, this great community we live in called Broward County, understands that a sheriff in any county in America, Calvin, is not the sheriff for one group of people or one city or one region or one airport. In Broward County, I was the sheriff for 2 million people, 1 million voters. And every voter has an equal say as to who the sheriff should be.
I understand that that's part of what you'll use, obviously, to try to get reelected come August of next year. But for the Parkland parents, they feel like somebody should bear some responsibility. Are you saying that you should bear no responsibility whatsoever for what happened?
Well, I'm saying the person who bears responsibility for taking lives is a killer who hopefully will be sentenced to death. That's the person who took the lives.
Dang, Scotty.
As a sheriff, as any leader, I'm responsible for fixing things, for reading after action reports, for disciplining those who need discipline. For example, I didn't come down with the rain as a leader. I was a SWAT commander over at Fort Lauderdale. I'm a tactician, and
a SWAT commander, and a tactician. It might not be something that you openly state to remind everybody. All right, because that's kind of a key note. I mean, not to say we didn't already know, but a SWAT commander and a tactician, maybe he was good at that. He was never good as a sheriff, was he?
I would like to think that I've taken more groups of SWAT teams and search warrant teams into more hostile environments. I understand police movements. I understand flood techniques. I understand dynamic entries. And that's what we did throughout the years I was sheriff. We got Kevlar helmets because a SWAT operator in the Pulse was shot in the head and lived. So we spent money and we outfitted every deputy on the agency with Kevlar helmets, gas masks, things like that, but as Special Master Goodlett said, there were individual failures that day, but certainly not an organizational
Well,
failure.
you actually said that your job is to fix things. So there are some Parkland parents who said after the shooting at the airport in Fort Lauderdale that you could have fixed some things and they could have been in place and could have prevented what happened in Parkland. Clearly, with the communication system, that was a total failure. But that was a Broward County failure, not necessarily a BSO failure.
That's a completely...
I do want to touch on that since they brought that up. And it's something we brought up before. The airport shooting is very significant in regards to the Parkland shooting as well, because there's many mistakes. There's many things that could have been learned from the airport shooting. Like, for example, when all sort of people, when it was calamity, right? In the shooting during the airport, when there was all this calamity, they noticed, okay, when everybody's calling up 911 at the same time, what you do is you block up the system. You basically make it to where it's not going to function properly at all. All right. And that's pretty much people's instincts. They don't want to go and save the day. They don't want to help out. They all want to run to their phones, just grab their phones real quick and dial 911. That became a problem because they realized their system is wholly inadequate for that. It just cannot handle that. In fact, it bogs down and it totally becomes an absolute disaster. That's one of the lessons that should have been learned at the airport shooting itself, and it was not. That's only one of the lessons that should have been learned. Was not at all, because the same exact thing happened during the Parkland shooting. If not even worse. I mean, like, they were getting 911 calls in different other various jurisdictions, couldn't even hardly do nothing about it. Right? The system of itself, that in particular, that was a wild failure. As far as the rest of the systematic failures, yeah, there were wild failures. All right.
False statement. If you and I were next door neighbors, Calvin, and a code enforcement came to your house and gave you a summons and told you fix the shrubbery, fix this, fix that, and you didn't fix it, could I get blamed for not fixing your house? The communication system, for once and for all, it is owned and run by the Broward County Commission.
Sure.
We have no say in that. We don't have the...
You don't have no say in it, but you could have spoke up as the damn sheriff who had any sense. You could have spoke up well beforehand and said, look, this is a sincere weakness we have, and we need to strengthen it. All right? But in reality, what happened is you just took advantage of it. Or am I being a conspiracy theorist? Scotty Israel, you knew exactly what was wrong with the 911 system. You knew all the sort of different failures. You knew all the sort of mistakes that would happen under this umbrella of chaos. And guess what? You, as a former SWAT team tactician or whatever, you took advantage of that. There's not a doubt in my mind that you did. All right? Your face says everything. And it's only a matter of time before every last piece of this evidence comes out. And you, with your cowardly, cockeyed face, you should have rode off into the sunset. You should have hoped to God that nobody looked into it ever again. But instead, what you're doing, out of your own desperation, is you're coming and you're trying to make it to where, like, everybody in your county is either guilty or being made a fool of. Meanwhile, basically, no one in your county, your supposed county, wants you around. All right? And so you could miss a whole world of hurt, but yet instead, you're still asking for it. You're still asking for the hurt. You're still asking for people to dig around and see what kind of nonsense you were getting yourself into. You're asking for it, and you're gonna get it, my friend. It's gonna come to you, and I'm not talking about no vigilante justice. Everything you did is gonna be put on blast, buddy. So why don't you go ahead and continue? Why don't you continue to make your own news? Go for it.
To fix it. It's not our system. And the airport, shame on anybody who criticizes what law enforcement and first responders did at the airport. I understand 5 people lost their lives that day and others were shot. But if you separate that, the operation and the way that agencies integrated, and we worked with FDLE and the FBI and SWAT teams. It was an incredible way for law enforcement to come together, and it was actually a successful operation.
We're going to talk more about that and so much more when we come right back. We're going to take a very quick break and much more from Scott Israel when we come right back. Welcome back. Much more with our conversation here with the former sheriff.
All right, I want to stop real quick. I noticed that we got Jacob Longer up in the house. And, you know, for those who don't know, Jacob Longer is a dear contributor on this channel. And he's led us to a lot of things, a lot of discoveries, to include, he was the first one that pointed out to me that Meadow Pollack and Alexa Midnick were, in fact, best friends for life. And they've been so since they were babies. All right. I had no idea about that. Not one clue until he brought it to my attention. And that's still a blockbuster detail. All right. That's still a detail that nobody, to include Andrew Pollack, is going to touch with a 10-foot pole. All right. But yet still it's open. Like, people know that this is the case, but they're not going to bring it up. That was Jacob Longer who brought it to my attention. Angela Tate says, "Oh, Scotty is an actor. Same as all the actors in that particular production." And as I stated before, that could be the case. It's very possible. Very possible. However, I got to say, at least with my concentration, with my focus right now, don't care about anybody else. Not at all. Not in the slightest. We're taking it one by one, person by person. And surely there's a lot of people in there who said a lot of things that are just basically unforgivable. I mean, I'm talking about a David Hogg right now. But we're going to take it one by one. We're going to take it Scotty Israel. Is it possible that everybody's an actor? Yeah, it's possible. All right. Is it probable? Not really. From what I've seen, it's like herding cats. You're not gonna get everybody on the same page. Scotty Israel is the actor we're looking at right now, and we're gonna put him completely, fully on blast. And then we'll turn our attention to somebody else, and we'll put them completely, fully on blast. Angela Tate says it's all a dog and pony show, Gerard. We need to move on. That might be the case, and if that is the case, then you can move on. You could do that. That's not even a problem. On this channel, on this video in particular right here, we're not moving on. All right, we're going to stay to it. And I respect everybody's, what you want to do with your day. It's Sunday. It's beautiful outside here in San Antonio. That's true. Not moving on. The problem is just because I don't really even have a choice in the matter, right? I just can't move on. Right, and here's what I gotta, just to kind of solidify why that is. All right, the reason we're not gonna move on is because if we were to see something and there's a terrible tragedy, everybody's lying and everything's all mixed up, and children supposedly died, we can look at every situation that happens and say, "Oh man, that's a tragedy. I think everybody's lying. Let's just move on." Right, and then guess what? It's gonna happen again and again and again, and I don't see why it wouldn't. If we're just going to move on and say everybody's an actor except for myself, I'm the only real person in this whole world, then we might as well just lay down. We might as well just go sit in the closet, We can move on all we want, but the problem is that that's not going to bring us anywhere towards solutions, right? And I don't say that as disrespect. I'm just saying there's a method to my madness, all right? And in that, I prefer justice. I'm not just going to go walk out of my house and say, "Oh, you're an actor, everybody else here is an actor, and I don't believe any of y'all, and y'all are all lying to me," because it really doesn't get me nowhere. I'm sorry to be like that, but let's go ahead and listen to the rest of this interview.
Broward County, Scott Israel, thank you once again for joining me. And you had talked about fixing things. Now, there are some people who feel like you didn't go far enough after the first tragic shooting with the airport in Fort Lauderdale. Are you saying that you did go far enough and there was nothing more that you could have done to prevent Nicholas Cruz from going into the high school and killing 17?
That's correct. If you look at the aftermath of the airport shooting, and thank you for bringing that up, the deputy, Jesse Madrigal, ran towards gunshots, took the killer into custody in 72 seconds. So everything else was just a crime scene after that. 72 seconds. Same sheriff, Same policies, same equipment.
But I remember covering that story here as breaking, and we were on the air for hours, and part of it was, yet you all may have taken the suspect into custody, but there were moments of uncertainty when there was thought that perhaps the gunman was in the parking garage, and that caused a lot of chaos.
Well, what happened is there were a group of travelers that decided to exit the airport. And one of the women who was in with this group, she saw, and you got to give her a lot of credit, actually a good idea. She's thinking on her feet, and she sees a group of police cars lined up. So she decides she's going to take safe haven in one of the police cars. And she pulls on the passenger door, the front passenger door, and it's locked. So she goes to the back, and when she opens it up, a canine's there, and the canine bites her. So she's bleeding. She goes around the car. With all the anguish, the poor woman stumbles to her knees, and all the people that ran to the parking garage, they start calling in. Shots fired, another gunshot victim, another gunshot victim. So I thought it was like 9/11, the North Tower, the South Tower, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon. So I said, we're going to clear this entire airport. And I think 17 SWAT teams were used to clear a total of about 22,000 people. So law enforcement, fire, first responders, our bus drivers, our cab drivers, everybody came together, and it was a pretty incredible response. I was very proud to be part of that.
So I just want to be clear here. So in terms of responsibility, the governor accused you of incompetence and neglect of duty. You're rejecting that wholeheartedly for both tragedies and for the almost 2 terms you were in office.
You know me. We started this segment out by you saying we know each other for years and years. We've been on panels together. You've interviewed me quite a bit. And like any elected official, I've been called some names in my time. I don't know anybody who's ever called me negligent or incompetent. After God and my family, the sheriff...
He's never met me. I don't know. He must not have met a lot of people.
Broward County and that organization and my communities were the most important thing in the world to me. The community knows that. If my wife were here, we'd just tell you how many times I got out of bed in the middle of the night because I wanted to be with the men and women of the agency.
Yeah, so I have spoken with some of the insiders in Broward County in terms of politicians, and they say there was a moment when you were on CNN that perhaps that might have been a not so good moment for you. Is there anything at all that you regret over the process of after Parkland, the different panels that you were on, the different interviews that you've given? Is there anything at all that you regret from this moment?
I regret that 17 people lost their lives. I'll never get over that. When I was walking through the crime scene and not only seeing the horrific things I saw, you don't know how often I pray to God that he would take these visions from my memory. And I also thought, wow, I wonder if Brad or Blake sat in that desk. I wonder if Blair sat over there. It was terrible for Susan and I, not as bad as for the families, but it was horrific. But at the end of the day, I wasn't negligent, I wasn't incompetent. And this Senate, if you read the Sun Sentinel today, the Sun Sentinel editorial said the Senate basically created their own rules, and now they can do whatever they want. And and as an American, and as a Democrat, and as a Broward County citizen, I'm not gonna accept that.
So let's move forward. Let's assume that you are reelected as the sheriff of Broward County. How could you and Ron DeSantis ever work together, knowing the tension between you two right now, assuming that there's some major crisis that happens in Broward County?
We have no choice. We have to.
How is it possible?
Well, you have, as a football coach and a former football player, sometimes we see championship teams where one player doesn't speak to another. You have got to put your differences aside, and for the good of the people, for the good of for the integrity of keeping people safe, you've got to put your differences aside and work together. To this day, I've never spoken to Ron DeSantis. I've never been in the same room with him. And you would think, as a veteran of 40 years in law enforcement, shouldn't he have called me up and said, hey, Scott, what's your read on this? What do you have to say about that? He made this decision in March of 2018 when he was candidate Ron DeSantis, and this was a political ploy, a political objective, and he made good on what he promised to do. He said, "I'll suspend the sheriff if get elected," and that's all he did.
Well,
All right, we're gonna stop right there for a quick second before we finish out this video. It's an interesting situation in which Scotty Israel, former sheriff, he plainly states that Ron DeSantis made a promise during his campaign, and then when he got into office, when he was elected into office, and it had much to do with the promise that he made. Once he got elected into office, he immediately did what he said he was going to do. All right? And as far as politicians go, that's kind of few and far between. That doesn't exactly happen the way the Ron DeSantis said it was going to happen, got elected, and then made it happen. That's why I got to kind of lean towards something of being a fan to Ron DeSantis. At the same time, everything could be a hoax. Maybe everybody who lives in Florida is an actor. I don't know. I'm not sure, and I don't mean to be condescending, but it's possible that, say, a Ron DeSantis would be on the take and that he's a part of some Illuminati agenda and blah, blah, blah. He's just trying to get over on everybody. But if you were to look at the facts as they stand, Ron DeSantis said he was going to do something, got elected, and then did that immediately. All right. Did all sort of things that he said he was going to do. All right. But I also want to address these comments. We got some comments coming in from Angela Tate up in the comments section, and I want to read them because they're pretty dang interesting. All right. The first one reads like this. How far would they go? And basically that's in reference to the controllers or the deceivers or whatever name you want to put behind it. But how far would they go if nobody watched their productions on TV? Well, to address that question, if I may try to, is that I can't imagine a world in which TV doesn't exist. I mean, I could imagine a world, but it would be nothing like this world that we're living in. So how far would they go if their productions weren't on TV, or like there was no TV to be watching their productions? Probably nowhere. As far as Parkland goes, it was a big TV production. I don't think anybody can argue with that. It was meant to have crying young people on the TV in order to take everybody's guns away. And that's pretty well in a nutshell, that's how you could put it. It's very obvious, all right? How far would they get without the TV? They wouldn't get nowhere at all, all right? And maybe they'll get a little bit somewhere on the internet, but probably not, because none of these so-called celebrity teenager cowards, losers, none of them are even interesting. Like, they're not popular. Like, they're not celebrity material. Anyways, right, so where would it go? The answer is nowhere. But, okay, she then goes on to say, there'd be no point in staging their S then. To which I would agree. I would have to agree. There would be no point in staging any sort of things if that is indeed what happened. There would be no point to it, but that is the whole point. They do have a television. And it's not really a hoax that there are people all over the world who watch the television. I'm not one of those people, but I do recognize that there are people who are, and who believe that things are real on the television. All right, so it does happen, and it did have an effect. Their whole Parkland thing did have an effect. The effect that it had was not a hoax and was not fake. Could have been based on a hoax, could have been based on fake things, but however, it did move certain people. Those people who it did move will not rest until all your rights are taken away, period. And then when your rights are taken away successfully, that's when they plan on, in no uncertain terms, killing you and your family. And that might sound like extreme. That might sound like, oh no, he's embellishing. No, not really. Well, once all y'all rights taken away, and my rights too, hey, that's when the killing starts. And I'm talking about that's all throughout history. That's not even my guess. That's just like the next reasonable step. Okay, Angela Tate then says he's talking about God and his family in S. But wasn't he up to no good with another woman? That's what I heard anyway. And actually I wanted to bring that up because that's not something that I brought up very much. like I've mentioned before, and I've alluded to, I've done a lot of research on this situation, on Broward County, on Sheriff Scotty Israel, on prior elections, on this and that, the trends over there in South Florida. I've done a lot of research, and there's quite a bit of research in which I haven't even shared really, because maybe it's not pertaining to what it is we're talking about. Maybe it's non sequitur at the time, but I wanted to bring that up because it was brought up. Angela Tate said, wasn't Sheriff Scotty Israel up to no good with some other woman? All right. And thing is, it could have been. Maybe he's up to no good with all sort of ladies. I don't know him. All right. And I don't know his background, but I do know exactly who you're talking about and what you're talking about. It's that young lady. And I don't remember if she even had a name. I'm pretty sure people found out her name, but she turned out to be an actress, actually. All right. For better or worse, whatever that means, that young lady, whoever is out there who's seen that clip, and she's talking about, oh yeah, don't you remember we were having all sort of affairs and stuff like that. I bet your wife would be pretty unhappy about that. Blah, blah, blah. You made me go out and get an abortion. You remember that clip? For those people who remember that. That was actually a very interesting clip because, and I know we're not going to be able to find it right now or else I'd go look for it. That's actually a very hard video to find for those people who've come across it. This young lady, this Hispanic young lady who's saying, oh, blah, 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 this and that. And I think she said something about getting an abortion. I might have added that onto it, but I'm pretty sure of it. All right. Either way, she claimed that her and Scotty were having like extramarital affairs. Now, this particular incident took place a long time ago. All right. That's what I came to find out. I came across that particular video. I found it very intriguing and kind of scandalous. All right. But then I thought about it, and I thought about when that video surfaced and everything behind that video. Like people had mentioned, this young lady, she didn't pursue the situation. And as it turns out, according to sources, she was actually an actress. Okay. And that was actually very important because what I realized at that time, and what I haven't even brought up yet, is if you've seen that clip of that lady, that Hispanic lady, that was actually a ploy by Scott Israel. And it took me a while to figure it out, but once I figured it out, that so my mind was a little bit blown. Here's how it goes. Okay, Sheriff Scotty Israel, he was about to steal that election. He had some Democratic connections, if you will, right? And he's about to steal that election from who was the current sheriff. That was an Al Lamberti, right? Al Lamberti was established. He had a reputation amongst the community. All right, the community liked Al Lamberti as a sheriff. He'd worked his way up through the ranks and did everything kind of the right way, the way that you should. All right, so he was looking to get reelected. Fresh-faced young Scotty Israel came out and he stole the election, like I said. All right, I don't have any doubts on that. He stole it. All right, this is a man that nobody knew from Adam and stuff. Like, he just came in and stole it away from an Al Lamberti who was already, like I said, established, had a reputation, a good one. All right, Sheriff Scotty Israel came into that election fully intent on stealing it. He knew that it was his, in his back pocket. And I'm sure he had many different schemes. One of his schemes was to, like I said, produce that lady's video clip. That lady who you've seen or heard about, Scotty Israel was behind that. He had her produce that clip, right, of her saying some nonsense that just wasn't true as far as the abortion or the affair and all this and that. That wasn't true. That was an actress. Scotty Israel or his cohorts actually paid that actress to make that video. And why is that? Why would he do that? Okay, he later on, and I seen it, him and his wife, later on totally denied that video and that actress. And then they said, oh, this is a product of Al Lamberti. Al Lamberti and his dirty tricks. Al Lamberti is the one who made this lady come on and say completely false things. And so therefore, Al Lamberti's full of tricks. You need to change it up and get a new sheriff. That was part of his little tricks. And it's really kind of slick. Like, you know, a lot of people saw it and they were like, oh, yeah, Scotty Israel, he's a bad person. Look, it's this lady coming out. It's this lady coming out against him and said he did all these sideways things. Meanwhile, that was just a trick. You were supposed to fall into it. People were supposed to say, look, this lady, oh, man, she proves that Scotty Israel's up to no good. Meanwhile, she was just an actress the whole time anyways. I mean, it was pretty slick, and I just thought I'd bring that up. That's just one of the reasons why I know for a fact that Scotty Israel stole that prior election, and there's no maybes about that. All right. Anyways, let's go ahead and finish out this video, and then we're gonna get out of here. And I appreciate all y'all for joining me on this beautiful Sunday afternoon.
He's already said that he would not try to resuspend you if you were reelected come next year.
He shouldn't have suspended me the first time.
Interestingly, there were some senators who said there was a Scott who was responsible for this, but it wasn't Scott Israel, it was Scott Peterson. How much of the blame do you place on him and the other 8 who refused to go into
Peterson and the other 8 are completely different. From Peterson, I learned something I already knew. I'll say it was reinforced. You can't coach, you can't teach, you can't train for courage. You could train deputies, police officers over and over and over again, and training's important. But if someone's scared and they're not going to go in, they're just scared and they're not going to go in. The other 8, I was asked by the director of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, rightfully so, and the Sheriff Gualtieri, the director, chairman of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Commission, not to do investigations, to stand down. So I didn't take these statements or oversee these investigations, but folks who didn't go in, I would have to ask them, why didn't you go in? Did they not go in because they were scared? Did they not go in because Scott Peterson, our communication as BSO was solely from Scott Peterson. Don't go within 500 feet. There's shots at the football field. We were getting information from Scott Peterson. The Coral Springs Police Department was getting information from the dispatchers. We were getting information from 2 completely different sources.
Do you think he was rightfully charged with a crime?
No.
No, you don't think he was rightfully charged with a crime. A couple of questions before we go. One of your supporters said this is really not about an individual. This is about us in terms of the voters of Broward County. What kind of terrible legal precedent do you think this sets?
Look, soldiers have died. We have a holiday, Veterans Day, a Memorial Day. We honor our veterans. We honor those who lost their lives. 2 incredible holidays. How many Americans grabbed a rifle and stood a post so you and I have the right to vote? Yeah. They took an election.
How many Americans grabbed a rifle and did what? Fought for our rights? Is that what he means? Fought for our rights to do what? Many things, to include have our own rifles, Scotty Israel. He doesn't say nothing that doesn't contradict something that he already said, right? And I'll admit to you, towards the end of this little interview, this little softball interview, the guy, he does bring up the fact is that Scott Peterson, Deputy Scott Peterson, was not the only person outside that building, right? In fact, guess what? Grand total of 8 people. There's 8 people outside of that building. There's 8 people. And then Scotty Israel was like, oh man, if I could, I would ask them, how come they didn't go in? How come they? Hey, you could have asked him for a year and a half, guy. You could have asked him that very day. Hey, how come you didn't go in? What's the deal with that? Right? How come it's 8 of y'all? But instead, because Scotty Israel hopes that you've never heard from him ever before. He hopes that every time that you listen to him is the first time you ever heard of him before. All right? Because Scott Israel, and I don't even have to tell some of y'all, weeks and weeks, months after the fact, is in front of people at safety meetings telling them, look, no, Scott Peterson was the only person on scene. He was the only deputy there standing down. No, actually there was 6, 7, 8, who knows how many deputies all outside of the building standing down. And that's something you should have known that very day. and yet still you went ahead and lied about it weeks after the fact, months after the fact. You went ahead and lied about it. All right. And you're hoping that nobody remembers nothing. All right. So it kind of like gets my goat. Honestly, that burns my biscuits. All right. And that's why I wanted to kind of stay focused on it a little bit. Perhaps everybody's actors. We're about to get out of here, y'all. Perhaps everybody's actors when it comes to Parkland. I tend not to believe that. All right. I think it's a little bit. I think, honestly, like I said before, you're giving some people too much credit. All right. You're making some people out to be a little bit smarter than they actually are. I don't think that that's the case. However, there might be a lot of people acting. There might be a lot of fraudulent people. There might be a lot of bogus people, as Scotty Israel would say. There might be a lot of hoaxers out there, as Scotty Israel would say. But I'm just going to go one by one. Tell you what. All right? Because I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? We're going to stay focused and put everybody on blast. And that's just what we're going to do. All right. So I appreciate everybody out there and for your contributions. Angela, shout out to Angela. Shout out to Jacob Longer. Shout out to the other person who wandered in here at a certain point in time. And then we're probably going to have some more live streams and stuff, man. I want to stay up on it. And y'all feel free to give me suggestions, comments, and stuff like that. Sometimes I might get irritated with you a little bit, but that's all good fun, man. I appreciate all y'all out there. And, we got to agree to disagree sometimes. And we got to disagree and then build on what it is that we both can build upon. I don't know. Anyways, all right, y'all. It's October the 26th, 2019. I appreciate y'all.